friends. Sorry about the shade and light and shade and light. I'm under an awning because I'm growing new seedlings. So over here I have what I grew. In my last video I showed you, but I grew it last week or a week and a half ago. About a week. And it's growing tons of things for the soy, bok choy, Swiss chard. So that means the Swiss chard seeds are still good. They were from Johnny's for back in 2018, I believe. The only thing that's troublesome are the garlic chives. I hope those come up. And over here I have the giant noble spinach and the Bloomsdale long standing spinach, which I grew about 2-3 days after I grew that, after I sowed the seeds. I only see one seedling coming up in this one, but that's okay. It was a few days later. And over here I grew a few new items. I'm sowing some new seeds here. All this here, I plan on sowing seeds every week. And sometime in mid to late October, I'm going to clean out the chicken coop and move the whole chicken coop and run apparatus closer to the wall and move my beds around and all kinds of stuff. And once I start my new garden beds, then I'm going to transplant these seedlings into the new garden beds. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to keep sowing seeds so that they're ready for the new beds. So today I sowed some dill, bouquet dill, and Swiss chard, rhubarb chard. Those have a nice red stem, and it almost looks like something else, but I like the greens. Tokyo long white bunching onion, I grew some of that because I love onions and green onions, everything in the allium family. And then chives, Chinese leeks, garlic chives. These are also from 2018. I bought a huge packet of seeds because I love them, but I only recently found out that they don't last very long, allium seeds, because they're real heat sensitive or something like that. I also harvested another snacking pepper and 2 yesterday, and an eggplant. And I harvested tons of Malabar spinach seeds, and I'm going to let them dry. That's why my fingers are all purple. I have a trellis here that is, the sweet potato vines are kind of not climbing up it. I kind of set them there, but I moved them from the ground to make room for sweet peas. So I grew some over here. And then under this cage, so that nothing digs up in this area, I'm growing some golden sweet pea and some sweet snap peas right here, all along this section right here. That I had these 2 trellises. I placed them here because I had green beans, long green beans growing here. So I had long green beans growing here, and it's not fully dead yet, but it's getting there. So I decided to grow, since the temperatures were supposed to be cooling, I started to grow the snap peas and the sweet peas all along, and I set this other trellis here to prop up the zinnias, which were falling down in this direction. So I propped them up and made them nice and neat. So, and then the second function was to let the snap peas and sweet peas grow up them. And if it gets too cold, I can just wrap plastic around this whole circle, and maybe the zinnias can overwinter, and if not, it's no big deal. I plan on growing other colors in there, and eventually I'm going to move this cage to prop up the sweet golden peas, and Let's see. So this is from the other direction of the zinnias and the trellises. And I have here a Cosmo that just grew really tall but has not yet grown any flowers. I've got some pretty pink zinnias over here. And I still have my sunflower stalk over there, which I might just keep and let it rot in place until the roots are too weakened, and then I can pull them out, because I don't want to disturb what's in here, because the branch, the stalk of the sunflower kind of curves like this. So, and I kind of like this little circle. So this sunflower, some of the heads died, and then a second bloom came up, and I just love it. It's so gorgeous. So I love that they always give a second round of flowers. This is where I dug up the canna. It's a giant crater because I pulled up 2 bags of soil, and there's still good soil there that I'm going to pull up so that when the chickens come over here, their whole entire apparatus, their chicken coop and everything, they'll be partially shaded like right there. So it'll help them with all that heat in our summers. And then these garden beds will be shifted over towards me in this direction, and I'll be growing a lot more crops next year. Look at our friendly little lizard guy. Oh, he just ran off. So the temperatures were supposed to be in the 80s, but by the end of this week it's going to be in the 90s. It's going to warm up again, which is typical of September in SoCal. It is supposed to be that hot, and I guess it's resuming that after that supposed storm was coming, and it barely gave us any water. So right now we're running on cistern water. We have 3,000 gallons saved up, and I'm watering every other day, and hopefully it will rain sometime in November or December, and I hope we get a nice wet year, a wet winter, so everything can just recharge. It's not going to be that we won't be in a drought, because we will be, because we haven't had rain in many years. We need to replenish a lot more, and we need to waste less water. But I am not upset with the heat that's coming back, because we need it. I want that because it was interrupted. This September was supposed to be hot, and it was interrupted by that storm. And although it didn't give us that much water, it did give us some relief from the heat, because it was nice and cool and in the 80s, which I love. However, that's not conducive to growing nice tomatoes and peppers and eggplants. So now that it's going to resume the heat, I hope that it does throughout September and at least into the end of October. It doesn't usually become wintry cold in Southern California until December and January. So even sometimes November is not as cold. I only grew a couple plants in the fall because it was so hot to get out here, and I was being eaten alive by mosquitoes. So I threw in some seeds for some Gita beans, and they're climbing up this trellis, which is fine because that's how I designed it. I set it right here in the ground, and it's already making a bloom next to my bell peppers, which have flowers, but I don't know, it only produced about 7 bell peppers and then it stopped. And the snacking peppers are doing great. There are several peppers on the plants. Lots of eggplants as well. This one got real tall all of a sudden. Beautiful rose. Love it, love it. Gorgeous. Here's another beautiful one. I love the color. It's like a peachy pink color. And I'm giving this bitter melon a couple more days to get a little thicker, rounder. Some melons. These are the golden melons. Here's another golden melon. I should probably harvest that one of these days soon. Guys, now that I know that things get to different plants, and if I can figure ways to trellis them up and grow them vertically, it's way better, because this fruit, this melon's not touching the ground, and it's doing much better than these, because these look kind of odd shaped. And yes, so the last heat of the summer will help us ripen them. Can't speak. I had a few that rotted in the ground, so I cut them in half and I threw them in the chicken coop for the chickens to snack on. These tomatoes, I thought they would never provide me with fruit because they were cuttings from the big boy hybrid, but it's giving me flowers, so hopefully it's going to give me fruit. I want some fruit before the season's over. I did cut them and plant them a little bit late, but I might try to overwinter them in a pot somewhere, like in an apparatus, because I have to move these because this is where the chicken coop is going, so I can't leave them in here, unfortunately. That's one thing that I have a hard time doing, is moving my beds around and changing the way, the configuration of things. But the chickens definitely have to move to the shady spot. It might be too late to have any watermelon, but isn't this thing so cute? It's gorgeous. I planted a seed into a pot and I was too lazy to move it out and put it into the dirt where it can get more nutrition from the soil instead of a little pot, because melons and other vining plants have a hard time growing in pots, and I procrastinated because it was so darn hot, and now it's kind of too late. It's making lots of leaves, so I don't mind because it'll have stuff for bees to pollinate, and I'll have material to throw into the ground to refeed the soil, so no big deal. And it's growing around my basil and my Cuban oregano. So this herb bed was placed in here early spring to try to get herbs in here promptly, and so for some reason the soil was really hard, so it was hard for the herbs to grow, but I managed to get a Thai basil in here, and I propagated some of that Korean basil. I got sweet Genovese basil here from the store. I propagated some Cuban oregano in there and some pineapple salvia, which I'll have to dig out and put into a pot to give away to my sisters. And I threw a sunflower seed in here, which now I'm trellising tomato over it, onto it. But this tomato plant has been in here for a long time and has not given me not one single fruit or flower. It's also from the big boy tomato hybrid cutting, and this one I put in here a lot longer than those short little stumpy ones, so I don't know why it's having a hard time. I mean, here is one blossom. I never had a single taste of that tomato, the big boy hybrid, because a raccoon or whatever got in here and ate my 4 tomatoes. And there might have been other tomatoes, but I never saw them, and the plant is starting to wilt and die. Here I've got Tulsi, and it's doing fantastic. I've been taking the flower heads and throwing into the tomatoes so that it'll confuse the tomato hornworms so they don't come over here and eat my tomatoes, my tomato plants. So it's kind of nice because this is really scented. And a second use is I take the flowers and I throw them in the coop so that the coop doesn't smell too bad. And I'm also harvesting the tulsi for tea. So I drink it at least once or twice a week. And then I go and I alternate with mint and other teas. I really like Earl Grey, which we buy from the store, of course. But it's really nice to have fresh tea from something you're growing in your backyard. Okay, so with that, that's all I have right now, and I hope to see you in the next one. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hi friends, I grew some kind of melon here and I don't remember what it is, and it probably won't grow enough in time for before the end of the summer, but that's okay. It's just from spare seeds. And then over here where the soil's nice and dark, I just sowed some black Spanish radish seeds. So it'll be ready in about 50 days. So that's not bad. And I could stick it in with quick pickle, and that would be good to eat or just to eat fresh. And I am trying out this Lowe's purchase. It's the Fairy Morse 72 cell seed starting Pro Hex kit, and I bought it sometime a few months ago, and I never tried it because it was the middle of summer. It was too hot to sow any seeds. And so now I've started to sow the seeds. So it has a top, a clear top, a jiffy. This is good for winter sowing or spring sowing. Not so much for summer because it's going to be hot. It's going to be 90-ish today. And so in the first 3 rows, I sowed some Fairy Morse kohlrabi seeds. And in this next 3, I sowed bouquet dill, Fairy Morse. And then in this whole tray over here, I'm growing My Gardener Long Island Brussels sprouts. And I'm hoping that's enough food for several families, for my siblings and for myself. So I am sowing a ton of seeds for the winter. And I was having qualms about growing Brussels sprouts and kohlrabi because they're in the brassica family, because we've been getting a lot of pests that particularly choose brassicas, which I've grown for the last like 4 or 5 years, and it's getting to be a problem. But I'm gonna give some of the crops to the family members that don't have the harlequin bug issue, and hopefully they can grow it successfully. Another thing is I'll let you know whether or not it's easy to grow in these, because I filled them with soil, but then they're starting to sink in. And the other thing is, if you overflow it with soil in the first place, then when you add the water, the soil tends to the water and the soil tend to wash out. And I've never sown seeds in such tiny little cells. I usually sow them in like 2-inch or 3-inch pots. So we'll see how they go. So these are the black Spanish radish that I grew under the rabbit cage so that nothing digs on it and digs it up, because I have something that's going around digging things up lately. And it's 20 to 50 days to maturity, so that's really quick to get food, and it's nice and crunchy and nice tasting. And I've got kohlrabi in this 72 cell in the first 3 rows. Some dill. I may have planted too much dill, but I do love dill. And then Long Island Brussels sprouts in the one entire tray in that cell, the Jiffy cell. So we'll see how they come up and the success rate, and I can give it away and also grow it for myself.